The story of ancient Rome is not just a history lesson. It is the story of ambition, power, blood, betrayal, and vision. It is the story of a city that began as a cluster of huts along the Tiber River and became the beating heart of one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. Rome is not simply remembered. It is felt in every stone arch, every written law, every empire that rose after it, trying to echo its glory. But how did it all begin? What makes Rome's story so unique that centuries later we still whisper its name with awe? Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine standing on the banks of the Tiber around 753 BC. There is no Colosseum yet, no marble temples gleaming in the sun, no vast empire stretching across continents. Instead, you see shepherds guiding flocks, simple wooden huts with thatched roofs, and a wild, untamed land where Latin tribes, Sabines and Etruscans, rub shoulders, sometimes as allies, sometimes as enemies. The air is filled with the smoke of campfires, the cries of children, and the deep silence of a land that has not yet realized its destiny. In this humble soil, Rome is about to take root. The legend of Romulus and Remus. Every great civilization is born with a myth, a story that gives it identity and purpose. For Rome, it begins with twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, sons of Rhea, Silvia, and, as legend tells, the god Mars. They were abandoned as infants by the river Tiber, left to die. The twins were rescued by a she-wolf who nursed them in her cave, the Lupercal. Later, a shepherd named Faustulus found them and raised them as his own. But destiny cannot be avoided. When the brothers grew into men, they decided to found a city, yet a bitter rivalry consumed them. According to the story, Remus mocked Romulus by jumping over the walls of his new city. In anger, Romulus struck down his own brother, and so with blood spilled between kin, the city of Rome was born, named after Romulus, who became its first king. This story is not just a myth, it is a symbol. From the very beginning, Rome was built on struggle, on sacrifice, on ambition that tolerated no rivals. And perhaps, in some way, the shadow of that first fratricide haunted Rome forever, for its history would be filled with both greatness and violence. The kings of early Rome did not begin as a republic or empire, but as a monarchy. Between the 8th and 6th centuries BCE, the city was ruled by a line of kings, some legendary, some historical. The first kings were said to be wise founders. Romulus established laws in the Senate. Numa Pompilius gave Rome its religious traditions. Entellus Hostilius expanded its military power. Ancus Marcius built bridges, aqueducts, and strengthened the city's ties with the sea. But Rome was not isolated. To the north lived the powerful Etruscans, a sophisticated people whose influence left a permanent mark on Roman culture. They taught the Romans advanced engineering, the art of building with stone, religious rituals of divination, and even the use of the arch, a simple shape that would later support aqueducts, bridges, and mighty amphitheaters across the empire. By the late monarchy, Rome had grown from a cluster of huts into a small but thriving city. It had walls, temples, trade, and a growing population. But monarchy also brought corruption. The last king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, ruled with arrogance and cruelty. His reign ended with rebellion, sparked by outrage over the mistreatment of a noblewoman named Lucretia. Her tragic story lit the fire of revolution, and in 509 BCE, Rome overthrew its monarchy forever. From kingdom to republic, the fall of Tarquin was more than the fall of a king. It was the birth of a new idea. Rome declared itself a republic, res publica, the public affair. No man would ever be king again. Power would rest in the hands of elected officials, the Senate, and the voice of the people. At least in theory, this moment is crucial because it set Rome on a path unlike any other civilization of its time. While kingdoms rose and fell elsewhere, Rome embraced a system of checks, balances, and civic duty. It was not perfect. Corruption, inequality, and ambition would still plague it. But this idea of a republic would echo down through history, inspiring governments from Renaissance Italy to the United States of America. When Tarquin the Proud was overthrown in 509 BCE, Rome replaced monarchy with a republic, a daring experiment designed to prevent tyranny and ensure no man could ever again rule as king. Instead of one ruler, two consuls were elected each year, sharing authority and vetoing each other's decisions, while the Senate of patrician nobles held immense power over finances, laws, and foreign policy. Beneath them, the plebeians, ordinary farmers, craftsmen, and soldiers, struggled for rights in what became known as the conflict of the orders. Through protests and even secessions, they won key victories: the creation of tribunes of the plebs with veto power, and the 12 Tables, Rome's first written laws that ensured justice was not hidden in secrecy. These changes strengthened the Republic and allowed Rome to expand, first subduing neighboring Latin and Italic tribes, then defeating the Etruscans to the north and the Greek colonies in the south, till the entire Italian peninsula fell under Roman control. But Rome's destiny stretched far beyond Italy. Its ambitions collided with Carthage, the great maritime empire of North Africa, in the 3 Punic Wars. The First Punic War was fought for Sicily, where Rome, building a navy from scratch, shocked Carthage by adapting naval battles into infantry combat, eventually forcing a Carthaginian surrender. The Second Punic War brought Hannibal, the legendary Carthaginian general, who marched his army in elephants across the Alps, winning stunning victories at Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae, where nearly 80,000 Romans perished in a single day. Yet Rome's resilience proved unmatched. Under Scipio Africanus, they carried the war to Africa and defeated Hannibal at Zama in 202 BCE. The Third Punic War, decades later, ended with the complete destruction of Carthage in 146 BCE. Its walls torn down, its people enslaved, and its ashes left as a warning to all who opposed Rome. But Rome's victories planted seeds of internal decay. Slaves and plunder poured into the city. Patricians grew richer by seizing vast estates called latifundia, and small farmers, the Republic's backbone, were ruined. Swelling the ranks of the poor. Reformers like the Gracchus brothers tried to restore balance but were killed, and politics turned violent. The Republic that had once been built to resist kingship now faced chaos, inequality, and ambitions so great that civil war became inevitable, setting the stage for generals like Julius Caesar to rise and for the Republic itself to fall. By the mid-2nd century BCE, Rome seemed unstoppable. The Republic's legions had crushed Carthage, subdued the once proud Greek city-states, extended Roman power into Spain, and carried influence across the Mediterranean. From a small city on the banks of the Tiber, Rome had become the unrivaled giant of its world. And yet, beneath this surface of triumph lay cracks so deep they threatened to split the Republic apart. The very victories that made Rome strong also poisoned its political and social systems. Wars brought immense plunder, slaves, and new lands, but they also widened the gap between rich and poor. Rome's traditional backbone, the small farmer soldier, was being destroyed. Generals had once commanded armies of citizens who returned to their fields after battle. But the expansion of Rome's empire meant longer campaigns, further from home. Many farmers returned to find their land neglected, debt overwhelming, and their livelihoods ruined. Unable to recover, they sold their plots to wealthy patricians, who consolidated these into vast estates known as latifundia. These estates were worked not by citizens, but by slaves, millions of them captured in Rome's conquests. The city of Rome itself swelled with displaced citizens. Poor families flooded into the capital, seeking work or relying on free grain handouts from the state. Unemployment soared. Tensions simmered between the elite patricians, who grew ever richer, and the plebeians, who found themselves voiceless despite having once been the lifeblood of the Republic's army. The Senate, dominated by the aristocracy, turned a blind eye to the suffering of ordinary Romans, yet some men dared to challenge this inequality. Among them were Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, two brothers whose names would become synonymous with both reform and tragedy. Tiberius Gracchus, elected tribune in 133 BCE, proposed a radical idea: redistribute public land to the poor, restoring farms to those who had lost them. To the dispossessed, it was hope. To the Senate, it was theft. When Tiberius bypassed senatorial authority to push through his reforms, he was branded a tyrant. In a shocking moment, senators stormed a public meeting and clubbed him to death with wooden benches. The first political murder in centuries of Roman history. A decade later, his younger brother Gaius Gracchus sought not only land reform but broader changes. Grain subsidies for the poor, new colonies for settlement, even citizenship rights for Italy's allies. His popularity soared, but so did opposition. In 121 BCE, violence erupted again. Surrounded by enemies, Gaius took his own life. Thousands of his supporters were executed in the aftermath. The deaths of the Gracchi brothers marked a turning point. Violence had entered Roman politics in a way that could not be undone. The Republic was no longer guided by debate alone, but by bloodshed and intimidation. At the same time, the Roman army was transforming. Traditionally, only landowning citizens could serve. But with so many farmers dispossessed, recruitment faltered. Into this crisis stepped Gaius Marius, a general who revolutionized the military. He opened enlistment to the landless poor, promising them pay, plunder, and most importantly, land upon retirement. His reforms turned Rome's legions into professional armies, loyal not to the Senate or Republic, but to their commander. Soldiers now looked to their general for rewards and survival, binding their fates to his ambition. This change reshaped Roman politics. Ambitious men realized that with loyal legions, they could bend the state to their will. The Republic had created its own doom. Armies became political weapons. The first man to seize on this was Lucius Cornelius Sulla, once an ally of Marius but later his bitter enemy. In 88 BCE, after a dispute over command in a war against King Mithridates of Pontus, Sulla did the unthinkable. He marched his legions into Rome itself. Streets filled with blood as Sulla purged his enemies, declared himself dictator, and rewrote the laws to strengthen the Senate. Though he eventually retired, his example shattered tradition forever. The unspoken rule that no Roman general should bring his army into the city had been broken. From now on, power would go not to those who won votes in the Senate, but to those who commanded legions. Rome was now trapped in a deadly cycle, reform crushed by violence. Generals rising on the backs of armies, civil war brewing again and again. Out of this chaos, one man would emerge, brilliant, ambitious, and destined to change Rome forever. His name was Julius Caesar. In 100 BCE, a child was born into the patrician Julian clan, a family of noble descent but modest wealth. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar. Few could have predicted that this boy would grow to become one of the most famous men in history, admired by some as a visionary leader, hated by others as a ruthless tyrant. Caesar's life would embody the triumph and tragedy of the Republic's final days. From his youth, Caesar was marked by ambition. At 16, he lost his father, and by 18 he was already married into a politically powerful family. When the dictator Sulla seized Rome and ordered Caesar to divorce his wife, he refused, showing a defiance that could have cost him his life. Sulla spared him reluctantly, muttering that in this young man there were many a Marius. The remark was prophetic. Caesar was not content to follow. He would lead, and his ambition would reshape Rome. The early career of Caesar rose quickly in politics through charisma, intelligence, and fearless rhetoric. He aligned himself with the populares politicians who championed the cause of the common people against the entrenched aristocracy. His oratory and charm made him popular, but it was his boldness that set him apart. When pirates captured him on a voyage across the Mediterranean, he joked with them, demanded they raise his ransom, and swore he would return to crucify them. True to his word, once freed, he hunted them down and carried out the execution, but mercifully ordered their throats cut first. Even in youth, Caesar combined ruthlessness with a peculiar sense of honor. In 60 BCE, Caesar brokered an alliance that would dominate Roman politics. The First Triumvirate is a secret pact with Pompey the Great, Rome's most celebrated general, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome. Together, they bypassed Senate opposition and secured offices, commands, and wealth. Caesar, elected consul, ensured his allies received land and favorable laws. When his term ended, he secured governorship of Gaul, and it was there that his destiny unfolded. The conquest of Gaul for nearly a decade, Caesar waged campaigns in Gaul, modern-day France, Belgium, and parts of Switzerland and Germany, where wars were both brutal and brilliant. With relentless energy, he subdued tribe after tribe, defeating coalitions of Gallic chieftains and expanding Roman territory to the Atlantic. He built bridges across the Rhine to intimidate the Germans, and twice invaded Britain, becoming the first Roman general to set foot on its shores. The Gallic War reached its climax in 52 BCE at the Battle of Alesia, where Caesar faced a united Gallic army under the chieftain Vercingetorix. Outnumbered, Caesar's genius shone. He ordered the construction of massive fortifications encircling the enemy, and another ring facing outward to protect against relief forces. When Vercingetorix's allies attacked, Caesar's double walls held firm, and the Gauls were crushed. Vercingetorix surrendered, laying his weapons at Caesar's feet. Gaul was Rome's, and Caesar returned not only with wealth and slaves, but with the undying loyalty of his legions. His commentaries on the Gallic War, written in clear, compelling prose, turned his campaigns into propaganda. Romans read of his victories with awe. His popularity soared, but his growing power alarmed the Senate and his old ally Pompey, who now sided with the aristocratic optimates. The triumvirate had collapsed. Crassus had been killed in Parthia, and Pompey feared Caesar's ambition. Crossing the Rubicon in 49 BCE, the Senate, under Pompey's influence, ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Obedience meant political ruin and possibly death. Defiance meant civil war. On a fateful January night, Caesar led his legion south across the Rubicon River, the boundary of his province. As he crossed, he uttered the immortal words, "Alia iacta est," the die is cast. With this act, Caesar committed treason against the Republic, but also sealed his destiny. Civil war erupted. Pompey and the Senate fled to Greece. Caesar, moving swiftly, secured Italy, then marched to Spain and defeated Pompey's allies. Crossing into Greece, he faced Pompey at the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BCE, though outnumbered. Caesar's tactical brilliance won the day. Pompey fled to Egypt, seeking refuge, but was treacherously murdered by order of Ptolemy XIII. When Caesar arrived in Alexandria, he was presented with Pompey's severed head. Far from rejoicing, Caesar wept. Pompey had once been his son-in-law and ally, but Egypt offered new intrigue. Caesar became entangled in the dynastic struggle between Ptolemy XIII and his sister Cleopatra VII. Siding with Cleopatra, Caesar helped her reclaim her throne. Their alliance was both political and romantic, producing a son, Caesarion. Cleopatra accompanied Caesar back to Rome, where her presence scandalized the city. Caesar, the dictator by 46 BCE, Caesar was the undisputed master of Rome. He was declared dictator for 10 years, then later, dictator for life. He enacted sweeping reforms, land redistribution to veterans and the poor, expansion of the Senate to include men from across the provinces, reorganization of debts, and the introduction of the Julian calendar, which, with modifications, is still used today. Caesar dreamed not only of reforming Rome, but of expanding its empire further. Campaigns into Parthia were already planned. To many, he was a visionary leader, bringing order after decades of chaos. But to others, he was a tyrant in all but name. Whispers spread that Caesar intended to crown himself king, reviving monarchy in a republic that had sworn to destroy kingship forever. The Ides of March. Fear and envy united his enemies. A group of senators, styling themselves liberators, plotted to kill him. Among them was Marcus Junius Brutus, once a trusted ally. On the morning of March 15, 44 BCE, the Ides of March, Caesar ignored warnings of danger and entered the Senate. Surrounded by conspirators, he was stabbed 23 times. According to legend, when he saw Brutus among them, he cried, "E2, Brute," and fell at the base of Pompey's statue. The conspirators believed they had restored the Republic. Instead, they plunged it into chaos. Caesar's death did not revive liberty. It shattered stability. His supporters rioted, his enemies scrambled for power, and the Republic dissolved into yet another civil war. From the ashes of Caesar's murder, a new figure would rise. His heir, Gaius Octavius, better known as Augustus. With him, the Republic would breathe its last, and the Roman Empire would be born.